Colleagues, good afternoon. It's day 2 of the Gaidar Forum 2021, and today we'll talk about cities, megacities, agglomerations, and people who live there. We all know that in the past 40 years, the number of urban population is up 50%. It's not just about the rise of the cities, it's that the borders of the cities are becoming increasingly vague. It's no longer about administrative borders. We are talking about functional borders. In 90% of agglomerations, the suburbs are growing much faster than the number of people inside the megacity. I did some research. Since I have great panelists here, I wanted to add a little bit of romanticism to it. And there is Vasily of Russia's famous poet of the 19th century, had a great poem. He said, "I love high, tall homes where I see the sky just above the roof. I love tall homes, and the taller they are, the more I love them." So fast forward to 21st century, as megacities are burgeoning, homes and buildings are getting taller too. And we all agree that skyscrapers are not the best way of life, particularly if the buildings are built really densely. So 20% of the homes that are put up for sale, for example, in Moscow, they are higher than the number of stories is higher than 30, and they're not located in the center, they're located in the suburbs. And we understand there are different routes. I mean, a change in the routes of how you get to your work. About 40% of the people work in the heart of Moscow, and it might take up to 3 hours to get from the Moscow region to the center of Moscow. So it means we spend a lot of leisure time, and that could have an impact on your mental, psychological welfare. So it means that our life is less comfortable. Russia is not unique. It's the fallout from the process of urbanization that is taking place globally. Let's look at the screen, and you can see 3 agglomerations: 2 European, Paris and Rome, and Moscow. One Russian example. This approach, looking not just at the administrative borders, you can see they are marked in black, but also their functional borders, they are marked in grey. It's a feature not just for OECD countries, it also applies to Russia. We see that city officials now use this new approach. Cities are no longer just points on the map. We need to take into account real human beings who need quality infrastructure, quality public transportation systems. Take Paris. It's smaller in terms of size than the administrative center, but these agglomeration, the functional borders are really wide. Rome is a little bit different. As you can see, it's growing, and the same is taking place in Moscow. Since the 1990s, OECD countries started to apply this functional approach to borders, and then this international organization, together with the Euro Commission, devised a new standard, and that is the official criteria to collect statistics. We don't have it in Russia yet. We still collect statistics based on the administrative borders, and policy decisions are also taken based on these statistics. And before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to do a poll for our speakers, for our audience. Do you live and work in the same city? A, yes. I've been doing it for a long time. B, yes, but I rent an apartment for it. C, no, I spend time to go to work to another city. And D, I work from home in a remote mode. I'd like to introduce our speakers right now. We have Irek Fayzullin, Minister of Construction and Housing and Communal Services of the Russian Federation. Welcome. Thank you. Denis Filippov, Deputy CEO of DOM.RF. Vasily Golubev, the governor of the Rostov region. Hello. Hello. And via video conference, we have Tadashi Matsumoto, head of the Russian international project with the OECD on the review of urban policies in Russia for 38 cities. He is also head of Sustainable Development and Global Relations, Center for SMEs and regional cities of OECD. Hi. We can see you now, and I would like to start with Irek Fayzullin. We understand that the Minister of Construction and Housing is one of the key stakeholders in this process. Now, if you want to build something, you really want it to be as profitable for developers and for investors, and would also be as comfortable as possible for those who will live there. Now, as you said, we have a huge lion's share of housing that is old. Sometimes we're talking about 17% of the cities have dilapidated housing, ramshackle buildings, and you use your index on the buildings. So, do you really use functional borders in your criteria, in your index? And what about the law and the comprehensive development of the territories? Thank you for these wonderful questions. I'm happy to welcome all the panelists and all those who are watching us live. I can see a lot of people in the studio in masks, and we have social distancing enforced in this room. So 2020 has been a game changer. We had to apply new rules. We have learned a lot since April last year, when we had lockdown. 51 regions in Russia paused construction for a certain period of time, but the amount of housing that we see today is compatible with what we had in 2019. So we were still able to complete our plan, and that's across the board: schools, hospitals, clean water projects. That's what the Ministry of Construction does, and there are other projects that we also support. So we managed to keep our plans. We were on track, we're on target for 2020. We also had to readjust some of our plans based on the instructions from the Prime Minister and the President. The ultimate goal is to make sure that the investment and construction process needs to be cut down in civilian construction by 1 year. In transport construction, we have achieved those targets by amending our legislation. You've given us some of the figures. In the past 30, 50 years have seen stronger urbanization, and that's a global practice. Russia is not immune to this practice. The laws on agglomeration, the laws on the comprehensive development of territories is a must. Time dictates that. There are technical aspects of this task, and our ministry regulates these aspects. There are economic aspects. Territorial development is done together with the Ministry of Economic Development. We do it in tandem. We work hand in hand with the Ministry of Economic Development. We would not be able to do it alone. We have regular meetings chaired by the Russian president. We have the task force on construction. That's an intergovernmental commission chaired by Mr. Husnulin, Vice Prime Minister. We discuss different types of issues during these meetings. Now, as you said, some people spend 3 hours going to work and then 3 hours going from work. Well, definitely, it's a matter of choice, and some people have to put up with such work conditions. However, many big cities have invested a lot into changing their transportation routes, transport infrastructure. Take Moscow. New roads and highways, junctions are being built. Metro is expanding. They work together with the Moscow region to get rid of the bottlenecks, to get rid of traffic jams so that people travel faster. Globally, people use a lot of cars, but the latest trend is that people increasingly use public transport. We've now been able to use railroads for Moscow public transport. So we've transformed Russian Railways tracks and turned them into the city transit network. And I'm sure that the governor of the Rostov region would also share his views. So we had several meetings on that, on Kazan, on Moscow. So we need to engage Russian railways and their facilities, their assets, because they have huge land plots which are currently not used, and we need to engage them more and more so that we can improve our transport infrastructure. We have currently amendments in our law that would enable Russian regions to do that. Heads of regions can change the planning, the layout of the cities. They now have this opportunity. For this, definitely they need to change it for the sake of the comprehensive development of their territories. So the heads of regions are fully empowered today. Well, I can talk a lot. Well, you said you'll intervene and interrupt me, but you're not doing it. Yes, fine, thank you. So we have an international project with the OECD, and we'll be talking about it. But there's a big problem. We need to get official stats. So what we see today is that some of the regions and cities now collect statistics not based on administrative borders, but rather based on functional borders. But according to the law on Russian statistics and official statistics, definitely doesn't accept that. So we don't have any official agglomeration megacity statistics. Would you believe this would be the proper way forward? Well, you have industry-specific statistics, like, for example, transport officials have the statistics on traffic. I don't really see there is such a big issue in terms of statistics. Regions do have these series of statistics, and overall the Russian government does have it. So where do you see the bottlenecks? Where are the hurdles? Well, what I mean by hurdles is that when we need to take policy decisions at the level of megacity, we know that we have Nizhny Novgorod, we have Rostov, Saratov. But we know that the city collects its own statistics and the region around it collects their own statistics. But when you take an investment decision, building a road, building a mall, you really want to have some migration flows, how much time people spend on getting from point A to the center of the city. Now, again, I don't really understand it. What's the role of statistics in the process of decision-making on investment? Well, in any case, an investor would be guided by his ultimate goal. Definitely, if you have a highway, it's really good to build a mall there. But you need to build the right number of parking lots. Otherwise, you won't have demand for it. And will it be appealing to consumers? It's all about price and quality. It's all about the services. You know, big entertainment centers are designed in Russia, and there are lots of them. So I don't think this is a major issue, the one you're referring to. But, you know, as we develop the territories, as we landscape the territories, as there are fewer and fewer vacant territories, we are seeing satellites cropping up around the big cities, around the administrative borders. This is why we need to create jobs around these new satellites. We need to have some kind of gravity centers. You need a school, you need something else. That's what we definitely need to do. A school, a preschool, hospital, or any medical facility. But if you don't create additional jobs, then people would again move from that place to the center of the city. So you need to provide a comprehensive solution. Definitely needs to be polycentric city. You shouldn't have just one center, there should be several centers of gravity. Thank you so much, Mr. Fayzullin. Now I'd like to give the floor to our foreign guest. Well, actually, thanks to the efforts of the Russian government, the Ministry of Construction, and DOM.RF, we have launched a project, it's a bilateral project between the OECD and Russia, to identify these functional borders for 38 biggest cities, like a pilot project. So the ultimate goal is to look at how, in line with existing standards, how functional standards could be used to defining the borders for 38 big cities. So we started doing that work, and we understood that some types of statistics, sometimes areas are not collected, so identifying some gaps. Sorry, are you talking about cities or agglomerations? Well, we need to collect statistics on agglomerations, but do we have it? Do we have agglomerations that are actually officially defined? No, we don't have them. Do we have? But only a few, officially. Okay. So how can you collect statistics if we don't have these territorial formations? Well, yes, this is why we wanted to have a look whether we can apply functional standards, functional borders as standards, and whether we can move forward to gather universal statistics, agglomerations. But I believe the ultimate goal is not just to get the right statistics. No, statistic is just a tool. It's just an instrument, you know, we use. Definitely the ultimate goal is a different one. We need to look at these big cities. Take the Rostov agglomeration. I'm sorry, I'm calling it agglomeration. Well, you know, it's fine, we call it the same way. But what I see, it's agglomeration. There are many more like this. So life itself proves that you have agglomerations, although it's not mentioned in the law, but you have them in real life. So how can we officially define those borders, those functional borders? Now I'd like to give the floor to Tadashi Matsumoto, the head of this project. Could you share the experience of OECD countries and how they define the functional borders of their cities? What are the outcomes of this new joint project on 38 biggest cities? Tadashi, over to you.
Sure, Antonina, thank you very much, and thank you, Minister, and all the excellency guests. So happy to share our views on functional urban areas and how OECD can support Russia. So just an introduction. So we first introduced the definition of functional urban areas in 2012. And since then, we have been improving the definition and applying the methodology to wider OECD and non-OECD countries. So far, we have covered 33 OECD countries and provide data not only defining the functional urban area, but also collected and provide internationally comparable data for those countries. It's called OECD Metropolitan Database, and it's publicly available at the OECD's website. So last year, we have started a new research project, as Antonina mentions, OECD Urban Policy Review of Russian Federation, with federal government, of course, but also with support of DOM.RF and the OECD Russian Center. So within this project, we are in the process of defining the functional urban area of Russia, and then try to propose with a population of the core city over 500,000 population. In our preliminary analysis, we have identified 38 functional urban areas, and we are going to collect information and try to use it in an international comparison with OECD cities. So we identify at least 3 major benefits of the functional approach for Russian cities. So the first, of course, to better understand cities. Second, to better align policies across a metropolitan area. And then third, to facilitate a new and better governance structure at the metro level. So just let's look at each of them. So the first, to better understand cities. So we want to know, of course, how well cities are performing. When I say cities, I'm talking about metropolitan areas. We mostly relying on the data collecting by a city, which is not necessarily reflect the socioeconomic function of cities. So we try to collect data across metro areas. This is a difficulty, first of all, internationally. The definition of cities are, first of all, very different. Just to take a few examples, in Norway, cities are defined as localities of 200 or more inhabitants. In my country, Japan, cities are defined as localities of 50,000 or more inhabitants in Japan. We talk about Paris, as Antonina showed. When we talk about city of Paris with a population of 2 million, when you are talking about the greater Paris, then population is 11 million, and so on. So it's a very difficult exercise. So what we really need is to have an internationally comparable approach and to help us, all of us, to compare, well, let's say apple and apples, not apple and bananas, to better understand the cities. So this is will be a unique contribution of the OECD. Second, talking about aligning policies, the minister talked about connectivity, transport infrastructure. So once we know which cities or which part of the metropolitan areas are connected economically and socially, then we can provide a better policies and a better investment in infrastructure and all the public service more efficiently. The other important area is a regulation. For example, talking about water pollution regulation, and if one city sets a very strict rule without coordinating with other municipalities, of course, such regulation would easily fail because industries can just find a location where you have less strict rules in the same metropolitan areas. Same for economic competition policies. If you are trying to attract businesses, and then if you are applying an incentive to firms, it's also easily go to excessive competition across different municipalities, cities, it leads to inefficiency if you are not coordinating. So this is an important point to understand the border or the geographical areas where you see the connection across a municipality area. The final point is to facilitate new metropolitan governance structure. So we are not talking about necessarily promote city borders to be redesigned or to be in a form of merger, for example. Not really. The functional approach is actually provide an evidence for countries, regions, and cities how cities, well, what would be a new form of metropolitan governance? It could be informal coordination mechanisms. Important point here is who should really coordinate for what policy objectives, and functional approach can help. So we are very much looking forward to continuing our research and providing a result towards the end of the year. So I'm very happy to further elaborate this discussion, which is a fascinating topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tadashi. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you for taking your time. This is a very interesting experience at the OECD level. The project that you are working on is very exciting indeed. Now I would like to ask Denis. You are actively involved in research of agglomerations. In 2019, you have done a very extensive research on 17 agglomerations. You looked at the density of construction. 15 to 17 agglomerations have demonstrated a good match between the density of construction in city centers and in the suburbs. What would you call the most important thing for the agglomerations and the vision of their development? For DOM.RF, for the development organization, development of agglomerations is very important. I can give you a few numbers to illustrate this. In housing construction, today, according to our information that we are following, 93 million square meters of housing is now being constructed. That's what we currently have according to documents. Altogether, we're looking at 154 million square meters. And that does not include all construction projects. In 20 largest agglomerations, we have most of the construction work. We have looked at most of the 1,100 cities in Russia. It's very important to know the patterns that development of agglomerations follow. I was very happy to listen to Mr. Matsumoto's inputs. We are working actively on developing policies for urban development. The purpose of our work is to learn to identify the borders of our agglomerations. We need to learn to calculate the flows of people within the agglomerations that we look at. We are working on this survey, and we will finalize this work before the end of this year, and we will make the results publicly available. We hope to generate recommendations on governance of such agglomerations. There are certain approaches that many agglomerations use. municipalities try to work together, but there are many imbalances. That is true for systems of transportation. That is true for the development of territories. That is true in many other situations. Look at the design codes of various municipalities. Today we don't have a single standard. People may live in one city, but in different districts. The situation may vary quite substantially. There is a school of thought that says that municipalities should be made bigger. However, we are not fully decided on that. This probably could help to improve the coordination between different services. This could help to get better balance in the field of construction. This could help to optimize many processes, but it also makes governance more challenging because the borders of agglomerations would then expand. There's a government resolution on development of Saratov agglomeration. The Speaker of the Russian Parliament has given us an instruction to work on that, and we started looking into the problems and challenges that Saratov is facing. We are developing our recommendations. This is going to be an interesting pilot project that should be a good example of what can be done. We try to take into account the best practices from other countries, use other people's experience. We are looking at everything that governments do in urban agglomerations in different parts of the world. This is a very important piece of work. It should help us to improve housing conditions. It should improve the road infrastructure, and generally cities should become more comfortable for residents. The comfort of city residents is our primary concern. We are working hard to improve urban environments, and we see that there is good progress. We want to make sure that people are satisfied with the quality of their lives in our cities. Gentlemen, I have a question that just came to my mind. I do not know who I should ask. We had an event in summer. Several Western experts in urban development talked about the situation at the time of the pandemic. They said that many people left big cities and went to live in private houses outside of big cities, and several people assumed that this was a temporary process and people would come back once the crisis is over. Others thought that this trend is here to stay. We have been doing a lot of work from home at the time of the pandemic, and I didn't really feel like going back to the city. Maybe this will become a popular thing. Do you see something like that in Russia? Have people left cities during the pandemic? Have people started building more private houses outside of cities? Do you think that people will be coming back to metropolitan areas once the pandemic is over? Well, about 7 million people worked remotely. from home. They used Zoom and other platforms to do their jobs, and the outcomes were different. Well, in the first place, people learned to work in that way, and that really gave new impetus to the development of digital technologies and to the way we are using those technologies. During this time, the transition to digital platforms was very rapid. It happened in many regions, and Mr. Golubev can give you specific numbers about that. We see that people are returning. We are making good progress in COVID-19 treatment. The situation with the pandemic is becoming more stable. This is the outcome of the steps taken by the government. We see progress. We see that people are coming back. Many people go back to the offices. I do not know how many people still work from home. In many industries, in many areas, people learned to work from home. They move around less, and that's probably going to stay after the pandemic. We will continue to work in that fashion. We have traffic congestion in big cities. This is unavoidable. Teleworking helps us to work faster. You cannot build a house remotely. You have to be there to do this kind of work. We still build a lot of houses, a lot of buildings. We have not stopped our construction projects. We should go back to statistics. Well, we try to walk away from that, but I encourage you to look at the numbers again. 2/3 of the population want to live in private houses. In reality, 25% of the people have private houses. This is what people want. That's an answer to the question whether people like agglomerations. People like to live comfortably. So when we say that large territories are added to big cities, we have to realize that this really transforms those territories. Of course, the labor force stays in big cities, and the surrounding areas or surrounding towns, suburbs, provide labor resources. People come to the cities to work there. The pandemic makes us think about new forms of governance. That's fine, and we're learning to work in the new conditions, and that experience is going to stay with us. It's obvious that many people went to live outside of big cities, and they liked it. They enjoyed living out of big cities. We have different ideas. For example, in Rostov agglomeration, there are 2.7 million residents. We want to encourage Azov, Novocherkassk, and several other cities to join the agglomeration. That should bring additional benefits to the people who live there. If towns join Rostov agglomeration, that should be good for them. Vasily, I have a question for you. You represent one of the biggest urban agglomerations in Russia. Do you see any resistance from cities that are a part of agglomeration? Do they suffer? Do they fear that they will lose some of their autonomy? Well, you have to find a balance of interests between different territories. Cities need land for development. If we do not address infrastructure challenges, then we will not be successful. We have to include the areas around Rostov. building agglomerations should be good for everyone. We offer development opportunities to the territories around cities. We are creating new environment for people to live in. And it is obvious that some people, young people, want to live in high-rises, but they should have all the essential services available to them. For those people who live in small towns, it's essential to have workplaces. So we have to address the needs of all those people. And of course, we have to provide ways of moving around. We have to develop transportation systems. That is something that we need to do at the city level. For some people, it's important to improve the quality of life. There's still a lot of dilapidated buildings, shabby buildings. City governments in big and small cities need to work together on this. We have to talk to the people. We have to talk to the city residents, and for people to be able to answer our questions, they need to know where we want to go. We want to improve urban environment. When we create bigger agglomerations, we want to make sure that people understand in which direction we want to go. And we need to make sure that people agree with this direction. The Ministry of Construction and the government of Russian Federation say that we are not just building residential buildings. It's not all about square meters. We need to create public areas, parks, schools. We can only be successful when we do well-balanced, comprehensive development of new territories. That is the task of every city government. The quality of living in a city is determined by availability of schools. There's got to be a school within 50 minutes walk from pretty much everywhere. 15 minutes walking distance, that's what we're looking for. According to Habitat, we know that the largest number of suicides happens in the families that live above the 8th floor. It's less comfortable for people to live in high-rises. People have to have a choice where they want to live, in tall or short buildings. They have to have access to various services. The Urban Studies Institute did the research, and it said that many people are afraid to let their children be out and about on their own. If there is a big public area in front of a high-rise, children can get lost and their parents are uncomfortable with that. Well, I was expecting to hear something different. We are hoping that we have a lot of audience from Moscow and St. Petersburg. 78% of the people said that they live and work in the same city, and only 20% of the people said that they rent an apartment. We don't have a very large audience in this session. I think there are more people who live that way. There's really a big agglomeration building up around Rostov. Cities and agglomerations are about flows of people. people moving around, and different parts of cities are interconnected. I won't tell you where exactly I live, but when I leave home, I cross several districts and areas that belong to different authorities. Well, it is time for us to bring this session to an end. We have to be able to change the rules. We have to act in a legitimate way, and regions have to be able to address their problems. We have a draft law on urban agglomeration around Rostov, and this draft law has passed the first reading in the local government. If there is a federal-level document on that, that would give us the idea of the rules that we have to follow. Then we would be able to see what is going to change in the lives of cities and agglomerations. It would be quite nice if some of the rules and standards that already exist would be disseminated, if people in other cities would learn from other people's mistakes. We should learn from each other. This could help all of us to make our lives better.
Talking of the law, we had a law passed on the comprehensive development of the territory, and this is why perhaps you're free, you have the free reign. You can decide on what you can do within your city, your mega city, without any size of territory. So actually the pressure has been alleviated. So we have the right laws that remove the hurdles, and you can work within the two different adjacent territories that belong to different administrative structures. I've not really heard of any tension between the cities and the adjacent regions. I don't believe there is any friction in between, so it's all negotiable. You just need to attract investment to develop these suburbs so that people just have a place to work. And that will help to get rid of traffic jams. So that's one of the key issues as we develop agglomerations. We can never catch up with the new roads. We'll never build the amount of roads that needed. No, we just need to create jobs locally. You say 20% rent an apartment. Well, I believe that more people should be able to rent out an apartment. Mobility should be our key priority. Our distinguished panelists, I would like to thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking your time. This is a very substantive session. We have a lively discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tadashi. Thank you. That was a session about megacities and agglomerations.